This episode, we're going to be talking about driving and all the stupid stuff you see people do that gives you road rage. Let's go through a list of, the stupid things people do that just gives you road rage, right? So, first one I want to talk about, this is first because I just saw this yesterday, actually. I call it two through the stop sign. So this is where, a second car is basically tailgating whoever they're following. It's really your turn to go, but the second car just goes, and follows whoever they're behind, and it just totally screws up the order of who's supposed to go through the intersection when, especially if it's a four-way stop, because these two people have just gone through out of turn basically. You're supposed to go, so then sometimes you're not even able to go. Then someone directly across from the two, maybe they just decide to run through the intersection, then it totally screws up the flow. It drives me crazy when I see that, and I know it drives a lot of other people crazy as well. Next one, and this almost follows the first one, is running red lights. So I live in a suburban area just off a major metropolitan city, and in my particular neck of the woods, at least at a few intersections, people run the red lights constantly. And it's not even just a case of, the light turns yellow and it's kind of that toss up, that gray area of, should they go or do they just brake really hard so they stop before the light turns red? This is when the light has been red for a good, 2-3 seconds before they're even in the intersection. They just blast right through it. It's so prevalent that a lot of people around here now, the light will turn green, and they'll wait a good 3-4 even 5 seconds before they go, because they're half expecting to see one of these lunatics just blasting through the intersection on a red light. It's a huge issue. Next big one, this is really infuriating during morning or evening rush hour, really anytime there's a lot of traffic, but it is waiting so long to turn on a green arrow, or even like one of those flashing yellow arrows where you're supposed to yield and you can go when it's safe to do so. The people that wait so long to turn on the green that they only start turning when the arrow starts to turn yellow, and as a result of this, they're the only car that can make it through then before the light turns green for oncoming traffic, and the whole line of cars behind them has to wait. They just totally screw over everyone else behind them. Next big one is blocking intersections. This is another huge issue. You'll see it a lot during peak traffic times, morning and afternoon rush hours, or anytime you're trying to get into like a popular place at a popular time, the mall or whatever on a weekend. It's the people who think that they can, they'll be the last car that they can just barely make it through. And so they'll, basically strand themselves out in the intersection behind, the 2 or 3 cars behind them. And of course, then the light turns and traffic going across is just totally stuck. They can't go because you've got this idiot who thought, oh, I can go ahead and push, I'll be the last car to go through. And they just don't make it. Oftentimes there's not even a place where they can get in the lane next to them, either on the left or the right or whatever. So it just gridlocks everything. Next big one, this really flies in the face of common sense. I get that some people do this for, trying to improve their fuel economy or whatever. But anyway, here's the point. It's, when you're driving along the highway or the road and there's, hardly anybody else around, and you'll get some guy, he'll come flying up the road and he'll just park right on your tail, and he'll ride your tailgate for miles and miles if you let him. There's no one else around the road. There's no reason for him to be doing this. And I've heard people talk about this a little bit. People will do this. They'll draft behind the larger 18-wheelers or, the semi-trailers or whatever. and they'll try to, use that large mass moving down the highway in front of them to cut wind resistance. I get it, but don't be doing that on. Well, first of all, you shouldn't even really be tailgating trucks that close. Give them their space, respect the distance. But it's when people come flying up behind like little, subcompact or just, just regular average size sedan, and it's like they're trying that same thing, but they're just tailgating that person. There's really no call for that. It drives me nuts when people do that to me, and when I see people doing that to other people when there's plenty of room to pass all around them. There's no reason for it. The next point, this is something else that happens. I've been noticing it happening a lot in my area, and it's ridiculous. And let me know if this happens in your neck of the woods as well. But it's when you're on a 2-lane road, so one lane going each way. There's not really anywhere to pass. It's not like you have the dotted or the dashed lines, right? So you can't pass on the left. You can't go into oncoming traffic. But it's where maybe you're waiting to make a left turn, and there's a few cars coming the opposite direction. You're having to wait, and maybe the one or the two people behind you, they just can't wait those extra 10 to 15 seconds. So they'll decide to pass on the shoulder, right? And they'll go zooming around off on your right side. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, you can't wait the extra 10 seconds for the oncoming traffic to clear, and then I can make the left turn. It's just nuts. Another big one is it's usually the guys who do this. They'll mod or modify their cars. They'll put the super loud exhausts on, or they'll have like the straight cut transmission gears. You can hear these things coming from a mile away, and they're usually kind of, not to offend anyone who has an older car or kind of a cheaper car, but they're usually just crappy kind of like Hondas or whatever, and they're like 10 years old. They look like crap, and the guys think because they stuck like a spoiler on the trunk or on the back of the car and decided to install one of these the super loud exhaust or do the straight cut gears or whatever, they all of a sudden have this wicked mean muscle machine. And it's like, who are you fooling? Like, you just you're cruising down the road, your car is super irritating to everyone else. And along with this point, you also see like the pickup trucks that, I don't know exactly how the guys do this, or if it's just that they have like a terrible engine or whatever, but sometimes you'll see these pickup trucks. They're not particularly old. Sometimes they're brand spanking new, and it makes me think the guys have installed some kind of crazy exhaust so that they're just belching black smoke as they peel through an intersection. It's just like, then you're driving through this cloud of black exhaust that this guy left in front of you, and on top of that, he's got a super loud engine as well, and it's so irritating to have to drive through that or see that. Another big one, and this ties in with the point of people passing on like the 2-lane roads. It's when you'll have someone driving well below the speed limit, and there's no way to pass them, right? They're not turning. There's no like side roads they're gonna be turning on anytime soon. They're just straight up driving 10 miles below the speed limit with no room for anyone behind them to pass. And it's super irritating. It's like, look, if there's no place for traffic behind you to pass, like you need to be driving the speed limit or very close to it, or frankly, you need to just pull over on the shoulder and let people pass you if your car is incapable of driving the speed limit for whatever reason. Maybe you've blown a tire and you're riding on a donut for a while, or whatever the case is. You need to kind of respect the traffic around you, and get traffic flowing as well as can be expected for the situation. Another big one is people just blatantly texting, or shaving or brushing their teeth, or applying makeup while they're waiting at the stoplight. And this often feeds into one of the earlier points I made, where someone waits so long to turn on a green arrow that the light starts to turn, and you got people honking their horns behind them, and really they're the only car that ends up making it through. And I think a big reason for that is people just being kind of oblivious to what's going on around them, texting, or I have seen people, shaving or brushing their teeth and applying makeup, while they're stopped at an intersection waiting for the light to turn. And it's I can kind of relate to this. Like, people, they're still tired, they're still waking up in the morning, they didn't have enough time to get all their stuff finished at their homes before they left for the job or dropping the kids off at school or whatever. But just think it's even if you're stopped at an intersection waiting for a light to turn, odds are if you're distracted doing something else, you're gonna miss that light, and you may have to wait for another light cycle, in which case, everyone behind you is going to be super ticked off, and you're going to still be there right with them, or you're going to be like the only car that can make it through. And again, everyone else is just totally screwed over in that situation. Another big one is this really has to do with people kind of needing to be better judges of how much space they need to merge onto the road ahead of other vehicles, or just kind of misjudging oncoming traffic speed. So this is when think when you're just cruising down the road and you have someone kind of pull out on the road in front of you, and sometimes it's that they just straight up cut you off, which is really bad. Or you would think that they'd have enough room to get in front of you, but then they're just so slow to accelerate that you maintain your speed, but by the time you get up to them, they're still going 10, 15, 20 miles an hour slower than you are. So then you have to tap the brakes, and it takes them a good minute before they're even approaching the speed limit. And it's just like, wow, you just caused this chain reaction behind you. Everyone had to tap their brakes, and now everyone's going 10, 15, 20 miles below the speed limit. And it just totally disrupts things. So people really need to be better judges of if their car it has a weak engine or whatever, they need to be aware of that, and give themselves more space to kind of get on the road in front of the traffic that's going to be behind them, because otherwise everyone else is just totally screwed over, and it's going to be driving so slowly that, again, it just causes this ripple effect behind them where everyone's just going way too slow then. The next one is, you'll see the 2 or the 3 or the 4 plus person motorcycle squads that are cruising around the highway and doing stunts around the cars that they're kind of weaving in and out of. And this is super dangerous. And I've seen it where these guys are doing this through construction zones and at night, and just during heavy traffic times, right around like evening rush hour, for instance. You just have to wonder, like, who are you trying to impress? Like, are you practicing for some movie you're going to be in as like this motorcycle stuntman or something? It's like, what's the reason for doing that? You're putting your own life at risk for sure, but you're definitely endangering the drivers and in the just regular cars and trucks around you as well. The next one is people speeding through work zones or tailgating you through work zones. And this is just like, okay, pretty much every major work zone you'll see on any major highway or interstate, they're going to have reduced speed limit signs posted in advance of that work zone before you actually see guys working or whatever. And it's the people who are going, 10, 15, 20, 25 miles an hour over the speed limit through these places, or worse, where you're driving the speed limit and they comes flying up behind you, and maybe it's again kind of a one lane situation. There's nowhere for them to pass, and you can't even pull over on a shoulder because they're the shoulder's closed, the lanes next to you are closed as well. You have nowhere to go. You can't even let them pass. Yet this idiot behind you is, tailgating you all the way through this construction zone. And, you don't want to speed up. You don't want to be putting the construction workers at risk from speeding. Maybe you're in an unfamiliar state or just part of town. You don't exactly know where the lane shifts are and all that. And you don't want to get a ticket either. You don't want to have to take the fall of, getting a ticket because you let this idiot behind you pressure you into going faster and faster. So it's really, bad, inexcusable driving, etiquette, and it's breaking the law too. The next few points, these really have to do with parking lots. And, I will just come out and say that I see this a lot at Walmarts, for instance. You'll see it at like Targets too, but for some reason Walmarts, they tend to have lots of pedestrian crosswalks, which is good, but these things, they stretch on for they're like 100 feet wide, it seems like, and you'll have people coming from, it seems like every time you're trying to cross through one of these pedestrian crosswalks in your vehicle, you have people from all corners of the lot, pedestrians crossing in front of you. They don't even bother looking to see if a car is coming. And to me, it's kind of a gray area because sure, pedestrians, they do have the right of way. Vehicles should yield to them in every situation. But it's just kind of the disregard that a lot of pedestrians have. They won't even bother looking. They'll just start, even if they know that a car has been waiting to cross for, a good 30 plus seconds, they'll just, meander out in front of it. And just, it's a really kind of sad state of affairs from what I've been seeing recently. But anyway, my main point here is, you'll get like the people who just park for like a minute or so in the pedestrian crosswalks, this being vehicles, right? They're unloading passengers, or maybe they're just, letting someone else, they can, run in real quick and return something, and they just treat that as their own personal parking space. So really this just exacerbates the problem, right? It's not, you've got, it seems like a dozen people, 100 people a minute, crossing through one of these crosswalks, just walking through. But to add to that, now you have people essentially parked in their vehicles in these pedestrian crosswalks as well. Next big one is, the guy who snipes the parking space that you were heading to, right? So you spot that parking space and you're going as quickly as you can towards it down through the parking aisles without hitting anyone or anything. And this a-hole, he sees the spot you're heading to and he whips around or pulls a U-ey real quick, and he just snaps it up right in front of you. Now I get sometimes that can be an honest mistake, but it's really egregious and unacceptable and inexcusable when you have your blinker on and you're definitely making your intentions known, and the guy just whips in front of you, and that's irritating. But it's like, what do? Do you roll your window down and yell at the guy? Do you park somewhere else close by and then confront him on foot? I don't know if there is really a good solution to that. It's like, what's going to be gained anyway? He's already in the space, so whatever. It's just, again, it's bad etiquette, it's bad form. If people are aware of that, don't go around sniping other people's parking spaces, especially if they have their blinkers on and, they're blatantly making their intentions known that, they're heading for that spot. Another big one is, discovering that, while you were in, the Walmart or the Target or the mall or whatever, some a-hole parked right up next to your driver's side door. So now you've got to, kind of crack the door open and shimmy in somehow, or just go in through the passenger side door. I have left notes on people's cars for doing this if they're parked, way off to the right side of their parking spot. It's like, really? Like, come on. Now I get that it can be a situation where someone parked way to the right, or to the right of their spot, to the left of them, so they had to come over, so they had enough space. But oftentimes I've had it happen where I'm the only one parked in a certain area of the parking lot, and there's lots of spaces around on either side, and someone parks right next to me and just jams right up to the left side of my car, making it really difficult or impossible to get in through the driver's side door. And that just makes my blood boil every time that happens. Another big one is, you'll have the families. They're just leaving the mall or the Walmart or Target or whatever, and it's the soccer mom with the minivan. They've got the 10 kids kind of running around the parking lot, and she's trying to wrangle them all together. And you're trying to back out of your space, but you got half a dozen of these kids like running around in circles behind your car, and they're so short you can't even really see them. And oftentimes there are strollers involved as well, and they're super low to the ground, and it's almost like you can't even leave until you just start to see that minivan backing out, because then you're pretty sure, at least hopefully, that one of the kids wasn't forgotten by the mother or whoever. They're all in the van at that point, they're all leaving, so then you can leave. Otherwise, you're just in this really awkward situation. You want to go, but you're never quite sure if, again, there's some little short kid standing right behind your bumper, or a stroller that's parked behind you. And it's super irritating. Another big one is, the inconsiderate D-bag who dinged your door with their shopping cart. You'll see this a lot. It really any kind of store. People they just abandon their shopping carts on like the little curb islands, like little planter islands that they kind of put at different spots along the parking lot. Or sometimes people don't even beach their cars on the little islands. They'll just leave them kind of straddling a parking space line between a couple of vehicles. And inevitably, someone will bump into one of these carts with their car, or just nick it, or a strong wind will kick up and the cart will go rolling and it'll ding your car. Or I've even seen it where someone they're finished shopping and they're trying to be cool and put their cart away by kind of ghost riding it into a cart stall, but they misjudge exactly where the cart's going to go, or in the hills in the parking lot and everything. And I've seen people actually just straight up push or throw shopping carts into the backs of other cars because they're trying to be cool and kind of just, again, ghost ride or kind of push a shopping cart from a distance into a parking stall, a shopping cart stall, and it just goes careening into someone's bumper or the side of their car. And the last time I saw this happen, the person really dinged up. It wasn't my vehicle, because I would have said something for sure. I would have confronted them, but they just slammed their shopping cart into someone's the back of their vehicle, and they saw that I had seen what they had done. Didn't say anything to me. Didn't leave a note on their car. Didn't wait for the person to come out. They just left. They got in their vehicle and drove away. And I just thought, wow, that is really sad. Another big one is, when you're in those parallel parking situations, and I get that this can be a little tricky because, people come and go, and there will, sometimes be different amounts of space between, the car in front of you and the car behind you. But, it's when someone jams their vehicle so close up behind you or in front of you without getting out afterwards maybe and checking if you have space to get out, and you're literally just sandwiched between these two vehicles. You don't have enough space to maneuver to back up or go forward to kind of shimmy your way out of that situation. You're basically just stuck sometimes. This is mostly common sense, and a lot of people don't really have a choice as to when they can drive or exactly where they can drive around to do certain things. And I totally get that. I recognize that. But let's look at some of the worst times to drive and who you're likely to encounter during those times. So, rush hour. This one's obvious, in any major city, or 6 to 9 or so in the morning to, maybe 3 to 4 or 6, maybe 7 if there have been some accidents in the afternoon, evening. Um, this also depends on, holidays and weather and stuff like that. You'll see lots of distracted driving during those times. People are, in the case of the morning, they're still waking up, or, in the afternoon and the evening, they're tired from, their long day at the office, or, retrieving the kids from, school or after school activities or whatever. You can potentially avoid this in certain situations, if you don't want to take the highway and be in the potential, several miles long, line of cars waiting to get off an exit. Sometimes you'll find yourself in situations where you can take side roads. Sometimes it works better than others. That can backfire, of course, because maybe everyone else has heard about that same accident, for instance, on the radio or their traffic app or whatever, and they'll be taking that major detour as well. So it's sort of like pick your poison. Now I get it's not going to be applicable in every situation. Certain places people need to go, they're only going to be accessible by really one major road or route, and you'll just have to kind of deal with it. But if you have a choice, you can avoid some of that by taking side roads, or if you have the career flexibility, or just other flexibility to drive at other times, just avoid driving during rush hour. Schedule your appointments or whatever outside of those times if you can. Weekend nights, Friday and Saturday nights, especially in kind of a like a downtown or like a happening kind of urban area, you'll mostly see lots of like late teens to early 30-year-olds driving around. They'll be hot riding around and speeding around, running the lights, and cutting people off. And to add to this, you also have lots of pedestrians jaywalking and jumping out in front of traffic. This is really true in kind of a downtown area. If there's like a row of bars or clubs and you're trying to park pretty close to all that, you'll have lots of idiots zooming around in their cars, but you also have lots of pedestrians doing stupid stuff because they're drunk. They've been kind of pre-gaming with the drinks, or maybe it's at the end of the night and they're catching a Lyft or an Uber, or just meeting back up with their designated driver friend to get back to their homes, or whatever. Now if you drive during the middle of the day, really any day, weekdays or weekends, and this is something you'll see all over the place. This is when the older people drive, right? Because they're trying to avoid the rush hour for the reasons I mentioned earlier. They're also not going to be likely to drive, on the Fridays or the Saturday nights in a lot of instances, because they know that that's when all, the hot riding, teens to, early 30-year-olds are out zooming around and running the lights and rolling the windows down during the warmer months, and blasting the music. It's just super irritating. So during the middle of the day, that's when you're going to be seeing a lot of the slower drivers. They'll oftentimes stay off of the highways. Plus, even if they are on the highways, there's almost always lots of other lanes and lots of room to pass them. So it's generally not an issue there. And then, of course, any major holidays, so 4th of July or Christmas, Memorial Day, Labor Day, back to school, most of these apply, particularly in the United States. So, be on the lookout for, some lunatics driving around those times. So anyway, that's been this episode, and we'll talk to you in the next one.